When you go no contact with someone, whether it's an ex, a friend, or even a family member, the silence can feel deafening. Your mind races, wondering what they're thinking, if they miss you, or if they've already moved on. But here's the truth. Silence is never empty. In that quiet space, a storm brews in their mind, one filled with doubt, curiosity, and sometimes even regret. They might not show it, but trust me, no contact isn't just affecting you, it's affecting them too. Famous psychologist Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And that's exactly what happens when you go no contact. It forces them to confront emotions they've buried, fears they've ignored, and truths they've been running from. At first, they may feel relief, especially if they were the ones who pulled away. But as time passes, the silence starts to weigh on them, making them question their choices. The mind is wired for connection, and when you abruptly remove yourself from someone's life, it creates a psychological vacuum. They start wondering why you haven't reached out. They might check their phone more often, scroll through old messages, or even dream about you. It's human nature. When something familiar disappears, the brain fixates on it even more. Steve Jobs once said, "You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward." And that's exactly what happens in their mind during no contact. They start looking back, piecing together the moments and trying to understand what went wrong. At first, they might convince themselves they don't care. They'll distract themselves, going out more, surrounding themselves with people, maybe even jumping into a rebound. But here's the kicker. Distractions are temporary. The silence always finds a way to creep back in, and when it does, it brings questions they can't ignore. Did I make the right decision? Do they miss me? Have they moved on? And perhaps the most unsettling one, what if they never reach out again? That's the real power of no contact. It shifts the dynamic. Instead of you being the one wondering and waiting, they become the ones caught in uncertainty. Napoleon Bonaparte once said, "Never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake." While relationships aren't about enemies, the wisdom applies. Sometimes the best response is no response at all. Let them sit with their choices. Let them wrestle with the silence. But here's where most people slip up. They assume that just because someone isn't reaching out, it means they don't care. That's not always true. Some people are too proud, too stubborn, or too afraid to make the first move. They might be waiting for you to crack, to send that first message, to give them an opening. The question is, will you? Or will you stand firm and let them come to terms with what they've lost? No contact isn't about punishing them. It's about protecting your energy and giving yourself the space to heal. And as you do, something incredible happens. Your value in their eyes begins to rise. Because people don't miss what's constantly available. They miss what's absent. As Warren Buffett wisely put it, the stock market is designed to transfer money from the active to the patient. The same applies to relationships. Those who act impulsively often lose, while those who stay composed ultimately come out ahead. So, if you've ever wondered what's happening in their mind during no contact, stay with me until the end of this video. We're about to dive deep into the psychology behind their silence, the hidden emotions they don't want you to know about, and the exact moment they start to feel your absence. What you'll learn today could change the way you handle relationships forever. Ace Wisdom presents What Happens in Their Mind during no contact. Number 1. The initial sense of relief is temporary. When you first go no contact, the other person might feel a sense of relief, especially if they were the one to pull away. At this stage, they convince themselves that they made the right decision. They may feel lighter, thinking they've escaped conflict, responsibility, or emotional pressure. This happens because, in the short term, the brain seeks comfort. Sigmund Freud once said, "Most people do not really want freedom, because freedom involves responsibility. If your absence means they don't have to face difficult emotions or answer tough questions, their mind will trick them into believing they're better off without you." But here's where it gets interesting. This relief doesn't last. It's like quitting a bad habit. At first, there's a rush of freedom. But then, the cravings begin. They start to notice the gaps you use to fill in their life. The daily check-ins, the comfort of knowing you were there, the small routines, all of it suddenly disappears. And that's when the doubt starts creeping in. At first, they'll try to distract themselves. They'll go out more, throw themselves into work, or even talk to new people. But the human mind has a funny way of working. When you suppress something, it often comes back even stronger. As time passes, your absence starts to feel real, and that's when the real emotional shift begins. The longer you stay silent, the more they begin to question their decision. And once that initial sense of relief fades, they're left with something much harder to ignore: uncertainty. Key point number 2. Uncertainty begins to take over. Once the initial relief fades, something unexpected happens. Uncertainty creeps in. At first, they were confident in their decision. They thought they had control over the situation. But now, your silence is speaking louder than any words ever could. They start asking themselves, why haven't they reached out yet? Are they moving on without me? Did I make a mistake? The mind hates uncertainty. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort of holding two conflicting thoughts. On one hand, they told themselves they were fine without you. On the other, your absence is starting to make them question everything. Even famous author Mark Twain understood this when he said, "It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so." They were sure they could handle losing you, but now that reality is setting in, they realize they might have miscalculated. And here's where no contact becomes so powerful. The less they know about what you're thinking, the more their mind fills in the blanks. Every unanswered question becomes a weight on their conscience. Every day that passes without hearing from you makes them wonder more and more. At this point, they'll start checking their phone more often, rereading old messages, or even looking for signs that you're still thinking about them. But because you're staying silent, they don't have any answers, just a growing sense of unease. And that unease, it's only going to get stronger. Key point number 3. They start to romanticize the past. As the uncertainty grows, something interesting happens. They begin to romanticize the past. At first, they might have focused on all the reasons the relationship ended. But now, their mind starts playing tricks on them. Psychologists call this the fading affect bias. It's the tendency for negative memories to fade faster than positive ones. In other words, the more time that passes, the less they remember the fights, the misunderstandings, or why they pulled away in the first place. Instead, they start reminiscing about the best moments, the laughter, the deep conversations, the way you made them feel. Famous poet Khalil Gibran once said, "Ever has it been that love knows not its own depth until the hour of separation?" And this is exactly what happens. They didn't realize how much you meant to them until you were no longer there. They might scroll through old pictures, hear a song that reminds them of you, or visit places where you shared special moments. Suddenly, they miss you, not just in a general way, but in a deep, nostalgic, almost painful way. And here's the best part. Because you've stayed silent, they have no idea if you feel the same way. That mystery makes them crave your presence even more. At this stage, they start questioning, did I take them for granted? What if I was too quick to walk away? Is it too late to get them back? And once these thoughts take hold, they become harder to ignore. The more they reminisce, the more they feel the loss. And when someone starts feeling that loss deeply, the urge to break the silence becomes almost unbearable. Key point number 4. The fear of losing you becomes real. At this stage, what was once just curiosity and nostalgia starts turning into fear. The fear that you might actually be moving on. Before, they assumed they had time. They believed that if they ever wanted to reconnect, you'd still be there. But as days or even weeks pass with no contact, doubt turns into panic. This is where their mind starts racing. What if they're actually over me? Are they talking to someone else? Did I underestimate how much they meant to me? The great philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "The thought of loss is perhaps the most intense of all pains." And that's exactly what they're feeling now. It's no longer just missing you. It's the painful realization that they might have lost you for good. They might start stalking your social media, looking for any sign that you're still thinking about them. If they see you happy, unbothered, or even thriving, it intensifies their anxiety. Because now, they don't just miss you. They feel like they're being replaced. This is when you'll often see them testing the waters, liking an old post, sending a random "hey" message, asking mutual friends about you, posting things they hope will get your attention. These small actions aren't accidental. They're signs that their fear is growing. They don't want to admit they regret their choices, but deep down, they're starting to realize that they might have made a huge mistake. And the more you maintain your silence and self-respect, the more their fear intensifies. Key point number 5. They start wondering if you've changed. At this stage, their fear of losing you turns into something even more unsettling for them. Curiosity about who you're becoming without them. You see, when someone expects you to chase them or break the silence first, they assume you're still the same person, stuck in the same emotions. But when you remain distant, composed and unbothered, it forces them to ask, have they changed? Are they becoming someone new without me? What if they're doing better now, without me? And this is where things start getting really uncomfortable for them. Because in their mind, the version of you that they left or distanced themselves from was predictable. But now, you're a mystery. And nothing is more attractive or terrifying than the unknown. As Oscar Wilde famously said, "To love oneself is the beginning of a lifelong romance." And when they see that you're no longer seeking their validation, it makes them wonder, what if I was the one who needed them more than they needed me? This is why no contact is so powerful. It's not just about making them miss you. It's about making them question everything they thought they knew about you. The more they wonder, the more they realize that the old dynamics no longer exist. Key point number 6. They start testing the waters. At this point, their curiosity, fear, and nostalgia reach a breaking point. They've gone from feeling confident in their decision to questioning everything. And now, they're desperate for answers. But here's the thing. They don't want to seem too obvious. Instead of coming right out and admitting they miss you, they'll start testing the waters. Subtle, indirect attempts to gauge your reaction without risking rejection. Look out for these common signs. A random "hey" or "how have you been" message, liking or commenting on your old social media posts. Posting things they know will get your attention, asking mutual friends about you, accidentally, on purpose, showing up where they know you'll be. They might act casual, but don't be fooled. These small actions are their way of checking if the door is still open. Because if you respond too quickly or too emotionally, it reassures them that they still have a hold on you. But if you remain composed, detached, or even unresponsive, it triggers something even deeper. Real fear of losing you for good. As Sun Tzu wrote in The Art of War, when your opponent is relaxed, make them toil. When full, starve them. When settled, make them move. This is exactly what happens in no contact. You've unsettled them. Hey, thought you would break first. But now, they're the ones feeling the need to reach out. And here's the most important part. How you respond in this moment determines everything. If you give in too soon, the power shifts back to them. But if you hold your ground, they'll realize that their usual tactics no longer work. And that's when they truly start to feel your